Good afternoon. My name is Jody Brockington, otherwise known as Friends of Jody, and I'd like to introduce and welcome you all this afternoon to our Digital Career Success Series brought to you by the Part 4, Resources to Get You There, a Career as Part of Your Lifestyle. We have had so many great speakers, but today's topic is so important because we all need to figure out how to manage our money as we go through our career success and also through our career lives, not only as we choose jobs, but involved in our careers that we don't think of. And Dominique Reese, who is our strategist, personal finance coach and strategist who we brought you today, is a personal FOJ, friend of Jody, of which she will definitely walk you through not just regular financial ins and outs that you need to think about throughout your life, but specifically to your career. Please follow us today as we go through this series and tweet out, friend, even send a little attachment on the Urban League Jobs Network, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we also have a YouTube channel as well. Before we start today, I do want to promote that this is the last of our spring series, and we'll be kicking off our summer Digital Career Success series next week, June 10th, with Control-Alt-Delete, how to reboot your stalled job search. For any of you who feel like you have not been able to really get your job search going, or it's reached a standstill, or you've kind of given up, this session is definitely for you. We all are on LinkedIn, but we all do not know how to maximize it to really support our careers, networking, and also to get the jobs and the next contract that we might want for those of you who are on the line who are not employees but might be entrepreneurs. And on July 8th, we are bringing back one of our top speakers. He's an expert recruiter. The do's and don'ts from an expert recruiter of what you're doing in your job search, online, live, at career fairs, on digital career fairs, virtual, and also just in person. How do you follow up once you get a job? How do you even find a recruiter to help you in your search? So now let's circle back. Hopefully you guys will find us on one of our social media sites and use the hashtag Urban League UL Success. So UL Success. I can be found at Friends of Jody, and you can find Dominique on Twitter at Reese Financial. So let me introduce the great Dominique and Reese. Dominique and I have crossed paths over many years in our lives, and all the way from financial woes to working as employees, and we are both now entrepreneurs. Fortunately, you're getting someone who's a little younger, so she'll give you another edge to how your career can work in another way, but we both know how important finance is to our success. So both Dominique and I had some time at Merrill Lynch. She is now on her own and does personal finance coaching, and she's a strategist. She helps one-on-one, she does groups, and she hosts a variety of seminars. And she left the East Coast for the West Coast and is now in Los Angeles, California. And I was tickled to find out that she now volunteers for a banking program for Operation Hope, for a program that I created back in 1996 called Banking on Our Future. And so money will always be part of her portfolio, and we're hoping today to make it part of yours. Dominique, we welcome you and look forward to everything that you have to say. Make sure you guys get questions going. Please use the chat area for questions to start sending them in now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jody, for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. I am just going to share my screen here and get started. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Dominique Reese, Dr. Dominique Reese, and I am so excited to share with you some strategies that will help you prioritize, organize, save, and invest in your professional goals and necessities. So ultimately, we are just going to dive right in about why we're here. And we are here because, as I say, the numbers tell a story and they never lie. So right now, what I want you to do is to locate a sheet of paper and a calculator if possible. If not, no worries. But if you're simply listening and you don't have access to materials, no worries. You may be able to access this webinar for playback, so you can also go back and do these exercises. But if you can, go ahead and simply locate a sheet of paper, and we will get right in. So your story, your numbers tell a story, and they never lie, right? But do you know the story that your numbers are telling? And if not, I want to help you understand that story in just a second. But why is it important to understand your story? So it's important to understand your money story because it brings awareness. And the awareness that you get around your personal financial situation can really help you consider the actions that you need to take in order to achieve the results you desire. So let's actually go back to this slide. It's kind of all right, so now we've got awareness, which promotes action and helps you to achieve your results. So here today, in our case specifically, if you are aware of your money story, you'll have the insight into how you can properly plan for your professional-related expenses. And that's really what we are here to talk about. We're here to talk about ways in which you can afford the expenses that come up when it is time to consider your career, when it is time to invest in yourself so that you can get to the next level, and in all facets, right? So, again, without this awareness, you may always feel ill-prepared to take advantage of the opportunities that really could propel your career. So if you have that sheet of paper, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to fold it in half and then fold it again so that you have quadrants. And I have an image up so you can see what it will look like. Now, each quadrant is going to serve as an area of what I like to call your quick and easy budget. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, and we're going to go through this rather quickly, but again, you'll have access to this information after the presentation. And if you have any questions along the way, please remember to use the chat feature and send them in as we're going along. All right, so now I want you to list each quadrant. The first quadrant is going to be income. That's the top left, right? And then the second quadrant, we're going to list it as expenses. The third, which is going to be the bottom left, is going to be called your net income. And the fourth is your savings rate. Okay? So we've got income, expenses, net income, and savings rate. And now you have a quick and easy budget. That's simple. However, we must fill it in using your numbers. So we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be where you fill in your income in quadrant 1. So take a few seconds to list your monthly take-home pay after taxes in quadrant 1. And in my example, I'm showing that someone's take-home after taxes is $5,000, right? So you write in what your number is in quadrant 1. Now we're going to move on to quadrant 2. This is where we're going to list all of your monthly expenses. Now this may take a little longer, but go for it. Once you've finished listing all of your monthly expenses, I want you to add them up and circle the total. So again, this is everything that you spend your money on in any given month. Some common expenses you can account for our rent or mortgage, your utilities, cell phone, internet cable, things like Netflix and Hulu, those monthly subscriptions that we all sign up for, our insurances, which also include your car insurance, your home insurance, renter insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, and any other type of insurance that you may have. So list these expenses and then list the amount that you're paying every month for them. Don't forget dining out, which I like to keep separate from groceries because they're very different, right? So dining out, groceries, beverages, which include, you know, your Starbucks, your Jamba Juice, your alcoholic beverages, that bottle of wine, whatever beverages you invest in on a monthly basis. And then the child-related expenses, pet-related expenses, any gas or fuel if you're driving a car, and then public transportation. Those are just some of the common expenses to help you get started with listing and determining how much you're spending every month on such items. So again, list these expenses, list their amounts, and then add up the total and put a circle around it, okay? I'll give you a few more seconds before we move on to the next quadrant. And in this process, you know, it's good, right? It's good to just think about where your money is going, because so often we say, well, we can't afford to do something because we don't have the money. And on the flip side, we say, well, I make decent money, but I don't know where it's going every month. So in your situation, when you're trying to take your career to the next level and you have to purchase things, you need to invest in things, you need to travel, you need to take on expenses in order for you to get to the next level. This is one way, again, where you can just see where your money's currently going. So now you have the awareness to take action, and that's what we're going to start doing. We're going to start taking action. So let's go ahead to the next quadrant. So now we're going to calculate your net income, which is in quadrant 3. Let's see, I think we've got a little bit of a delay here on the slide. May need your assistance at the home base. I'm getting,
Okay, we'll
it
try
seems
to work
like
on it.
okay, thank you. It seems like I'm stuck. So what we're going to do is calculate the net income in quadrant 3. Now, what is your net income? Perfect. There we go. The slide just changed. So the net income is the money you have left over in any given month, right, after all of your expenses have been accounted for. Uh-oh. Now it's going faster. It's okay, though. So the net income is going to be equal to your income from quadrant 1, subtract your expenses from quadrant 2. So again, go to quadrant 1. That's where you had your income. And then quadrant 2, you were able to calculate a total number for your expenses, right? So now we're going to use quadrant 3 to do the calculation. So net income is equal to income minus expenses. So go on ahead and do that calculation. And in my example, my income was $5,000. My expenses were $4,300. So that left me with a net income of $700, right? So now for you, you work out your numbers and you figure out what your net income will be. Now, what comes next is very important. If your net income is a positive number, you get to pass go, right? But if your net income is a negative number, you have got to go back to quadrant 2 and do the ER method. And we're going to share a little bit more about what the ER method is right now. Okay? So the ER method is when you find expenses to eliminate and reduce for the upcoming months, only for the upcoming months. So it's not something that you've got to take on for the rest of your life, right? But it is just for the upcoming months for the sake of you achieving these goals. So remember, everything's short term at this point. So it's the process by which you find expenses to eliminate and reduce for the upcoming month in order to achieve your desired goal. Now, this is the easiest and quickest way for you to have money for the things that you want to accomplish. And again, in our specific situation, the things that we're trying to accomplish are our professional goals. So, and it's really helpful, again, when you're already living beyond your means, because when you're living beyond your means, you're extended, right? And we're familiar with paycheck to paycheck living. That's what we hear it as. So when you're living paycheck to paycheck, this is one way in which you can stop living paycheck to paycheck, to go back and look at where you can eliminate or reduce some of your expenses. And ideally, once you've found enough money to create a positive net income, then you're ready to move on to the next step that we've got in this process. So what I want you to do is to take a look at those expenses in quadrant 2 and put a square around the expenses you can reduce or eliminate for the upcoming month. Now, give these expenses a bit of thought, because you may think, well, this is a fixed expense. I can't get rid of this. But you may be able to with some thought, with some creativity. And again, it's just for the upcoming months. It's not something that you need to take on for the rest of your life. So think short term. Think about what it is we're trying to accomplish. Think about the benefits of accomplishing these goals. And that will help you to overcome that hurdle of what it's going to feel like, you know, to make these reductions, to make these eliminations. So we're doing a CBA here. We're doing our own cost-benefit analysis about, you know, why is it important for me to reduce or eliminate this particular expense just for the next 2 or 3 months? Well, the benefit is that I'm able to then find money so that I can invest in that coach. You know, I'm able to find money to invest in a resume writer. I'm able to attend this conference that's coming up. So again, we want to remind ourselves why we're doing what we're doing, what the benefits are, and that it may only hurt a little bit in the short term, but the benefit definitely outweighs the cost, okay? So again, consider those expenses that you can reduce and eliminate, and again, only for the next few months. Every little bit adds up, so I don't want you to think, oh, you know, $5 here, $10 there, $50 here. It adds up, especially on a monthly basis. So every little bit counts. And always remember, the greater goal is at work. Your professional goals and the necessities that you have are really the priority. So then I want you to add up all the amounts from the squares and draw a triangle around the total. So now you've got expenses that's identified that you can reduce or eliminate, and they cost a certain amount every month, right? Add up the totals that they cost every month, and whatever that total is, I want you to draw a triangle around it. Write it down and draw a triangle around it. Next slide, please. And when you draw the triangle around this new number, I want you to then take it to quadrant 3 and add it to your net income. And this is now your new net income. So in my example, I had a net income of $700, and I found, let's say, I found $300 that I could eliminate or reduce on a monthly basis, just by considering certain expenses that I could get rid of or, again, reduce for the next few months. And so what that meant for me was that I now have $300 extra that I found. And given that, I'm able to add that back into my budget, right? I'm able to add that back into what I now have available to spend. So add the triangle figure to your net income figure, and you'll now have a new net income. Now, if you had a positive income to begin with, a positive net income to begin with, then you can also, engage in the ER method. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to find any more money. I'm sure you would appreciate that, right? So even if you had a positive income, net income to begin with, you can still engage the ER method to find more money. But if you have that negative net income, then obviously you needed to do this so that you could find the money to not only just make ends meet, but really understand what you can go without for the next few months in order to achieve the greater goal. Okay? Awesome. So now that you've calculated your net income, your new net income, you know what you can work with once all of your bills and expenses are accounted for on a monthly basis, because that's basically what this means. This means that you have accounted for all of the things that need to get paid, and knowing what's coming in and knowing what's going out, this is what's left over. Now, what I want you to do is to go to quadrant 2. Look at your quick and easy budget. And in quadrant 2, do you see any expenses that you've labeled for savings? So what I'm asking is, are you saving money on a monthly basis just to begin with? And if not, then that's what we're going to use this money for. We are going to use this money to dedicate towards your savings, and out of the savings, towards your professional fund. So if you do not have, well, let's start with if you do. If you do have an expense called my savings, or whatever you label it, then, and you had a positive net income, then that means we can stand to save more money, right? And that's always good news. And that's exactly what we'll do. We will save more money. But if you did not have any expenses labeled savings in quadrant 2, then you know specifically that this new net income that you have is going to go towards your savings. And again, specifically for the purposes of today's presentation, how this savings can be used to invest in your professional fund. All right? So we're going to do that by determining our savings rate. And what is your savings rate? We can keep it on this slide just for a second. Thank you. So your savings rate is how much money you want to dedicate towards your savings and ultimately your professional fund. And we're going to use quadrant 4 of our quick and easy budget for this section. Right? So you calculate your savings rate by first determining how much of your net income you want to save. So again, in my example, I have $700 as my old net income. I found $300 from eliminating and reducing expenses, and now I'm going to add that $300 into the new net income. So now I have $1,000 that I am now able to dedicate towards whatever I want, but for the purposes of this call in our webinar, it is our professional fund. That's what's our priority. That's what we're trying to achieve goals with, is really taking our careers to the next level and having the money to do so. So that's what this money is going to be used for, and I want you to remind yourself of that, because we have a tendency to do what's comfortable and what we're used to. I always say money is very behavioral. It's very personal. So if you find an extra $1,000 or realize that you got an extra $1,000, you may not be as diligent in putting it to where it needs to go. So we have to constantly and consistently remind ourselves of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the benefits of doing it, right? Okay, so in my example, I have $1,000 that I can use towards my professional fund. For you, you know what your number is, right? So now you need to determine how much of your number do you want to save. So for me, that would be how much of my $1,000 do I want to save towards my professional fund. For the sake of this example, I'm going to just say $600, right? So $600 of the $1,000 that I now have is what I'm going to save towards my professional fund every month. So using that figure, we're now going to divide the amount we want to save. So again, for me, $600, for you, whatever your number is, by our total income from quadrant 1. So here in my example, I have 600 divided by 5,000. 600 is the amount I want to save. 5,000 is how much I'm bringing in after taxes on a monthly basis. When you do the math, you're going to get a decimal. My decimal is 0.12. And then we're going to multiply the decimal by 100 in order to get a percent. And when we get this percent, we're going to stay here for a second. I'm going to explain exactly what this means, right? So for my example, my savings rate is 12%. I'm saving 12% of my monthly income, and I'm putting it towards my professional fund or whatever other savings, right? But again, for the purposes of today, we're putting it towards our professional fund. What is your number? What is your percent? So what does it really mean? What is this saying, right? So what this is saying is for every dollar that I earn, I am saving 12 cents. Let that sink in for a second, right? For every dollar that I earn, I'm saving 12 cents. So that's a savings rate of 12%. Now, step back for a second, and status quo says that, you know, we should save 10% of our income, right? And usually that's on a pre-tax basis. But I like to work with after-tax numbers because that's really what we're working with. So at the end of the day, you have to say, well, if you're saving more than the 10%, you should feel good about that, right? I always like to remind my clients that it's our small successes that lead to our larger victories. So overall, every little step matters. And if your number is not more than 10%, no worries. That's A-okay, because you may not have been saving anything prior to now, right? So again, focus on your success. Focus on what you are doing right, because it's not very difficult. But when you get caught up in the woes of money management, you make it, you spend it, you make it, you spend it, and then you now have to account for the things that become important. Oh, I want to attend this conference. Oh, I need to hire someone to help me with my resume. Oh, I need to hire a coach because I'm lost and I don't know which direction I need to go in. Oh, I need to work on my negotiation skills so that I'm able to negotiate a better pay rate or get this promotion that I'm really, really deserving of. All of those things that come into play when they do, but then we look and we say, well, wow, I don't have the resources to do it, right? So these numbers really start to make sense. For every dollar you earn, can you save 12 cents of it? It seems so frivolous, right? 12 cents, of course, I can save 12 cents. Well, are you saving 12 cents? Are you saving whatever your number is? If not, today is the day that you can change that. Okay? So, perfect. Thank you. This is awesome. We can rest here for a second. Now, just really quickly, I want you to think about the rest of the money really quickly, right? So remember, my number was $1,000. I had $1,000 in new net income. I'm saving $600 towards my professional fund. So what about the other $400? Well, the other $400 can go towards whatever I want it to. But as you see in the slide, I have an arrow that's drawing to my savings, because now you can actually save outside of your professional fund. And let that soak in, right? So if you weren't saving before, and now you found money that you can allocate towards savings, and within that savings, you're going to take a portion of the money and allocate it towards your professional fund. But then because there's some left over, you still have room to save, and lo and behold, the rest of your expenses are being paid. I think we've just solved it, right? It may feel like it's unreal, but the numbers tell a story and they never lie. So if you follow this system, it will work for you. So what are you going to do with your extras? You know, you got extras. If you chose not to save 100% of your net income, ideally you are saving it, but how you allocate it is where you gain flexibility in your financial life. And I would encourage you to use it to fill in the gaps of your wealth foundation. You know, put it towards your emergency fund, put it towards any after-tax retirement or any investments. You know what you're lacking in your financial life. So now that you've found this money, think wisely about how you can allocate it towards the needs that you have, including your professional needs and anything else, right? So get excited about that. But now let's take a little breather and recap what we've just done, because we've done a lot in a short amount of time. And we've actually made some really good progress. So I want to be sure that we can digest it, right? So within the past few minutes, you created a quick and easy budget to determine how much money you can afford to dedicate to professional-related expenses. However, you also gain insight into your current personal financial situation, such that you know where you can eliminate and reduce expenses. That's so huge, right? And you're doing that so that you can find money you didn't think you had in the first place and really redirect it to your higher priorities and your goals. So that is what we've just done, which is really the hard part. Now, if there are any questions about the math we just did, simply submit them now, and when we get to the Q&A section, I'll do my best to address as many questions as possible. Okay? So now that we've taken that quick breather, we're going to hop right back in, and we're going to consider the most common professional-related expenses that we may need to save for and or be responsible for, just generally, in order to take advantage of the best opportunities for our careers. So some of the most common career expenses that I just came up with off the top of my head, you know, wardrobe, the suits, the ties, your skirts, your blouses, your button-ups, your khakis, whatever it is, but your wardrobe, your laptop. Some of us need to invest in new equipment, the software for those laptops, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're running your own shop, you may need to purchase a whole system. Resume writers, editors, copywriters. Again, I want to account for the entrepreneurs on the line who need these types of professionals. I know as a business owner and entrepreneur, I don't do all of my writing all the time. But even when I do, I have to hire an editor. I want it to be right, you know. So again, these are the types of professional fees that should be accounted for. Career coaches and other professionals that we may need to hire and their fees. But then we've got the membership dues, alumni associations, private club dues. We all know the benefits of joining these things, right? When you're a part of something, you get to network with people who are like-minded, who have the same or similar goals to you. And that can do wonders for your career. We always say it's who you know, not what you know, right? Your network is your net worth. Well, if you're not surrounding yourself with people who can help take you to the next level, how do you expect to get to the next level? Some of those people may not even be in your organization. So you can't always rely on, you know, simply networking within the organization. You may need to invest in your alumni association and or any other clubs that you can find. Then we've got, you know, people like myself, the financial coaches, the advisors, the planners, who help you keep your finances in order so you know just what you can and can't do. So you know the opportunities within your financial life so that when things do come up, you can take advantage of them. But this is an ongoing relationship, right? So it's not just in the state of a crisis, which is when most people reach out for financial help. You know, heed that and really start to consider how you can work with someone now so that your ducks are in a row, your financial house is in order, but you're starting to build that financial foundation that you can then build upon, because you're going to be working for someone, right? So you're going to be earning money. Put that money to the best use so that you're not working for the rest of your life. And if you do decide to hop into entrepreneurship or become a small business owner, your personal finances are in order to help you do so. Then you've got things like the conferences, seminars, and webinars. You know, the National Urban League is planning its conference. It's coming up at the end of July. Are you going? Can you afford to go? Those are expenses, again, that we need to start accounting for. Books and magazine subscriptions, journal subscriptions. So if you're in a particular industry where it's really important to stay in the know, and staying in the know can make the difference in your paycheck or in your promotion or in who feeds you, then I think that's a very important investment, right? Then we've got online classes, professional development, executive education programs. So many of us may want to get to the next level, but we may need more development. We may need more knowledge. And if that's something your company or organization doesn't provide, then yeah, you've got to take that on. And some of those programs are not, you know, an easy come up. They may be a good little pinch to your pocket, a few thousand, right? So how are you preparing for those types of expenses? And then, of course, if you do decide to go somewhere, you need to pay to get there, airfare, lodging, rental cars. Those things can definitely add up. And then, of course, the more typical and common, the lunch and dinner meetings, right? Oh, I'm meeting with so-and-so for lunch. We're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. Oh, I've got a dinner with clients. We're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. But those things add up. And if you're footing the bill, they definitely add up. And most times we like to be generous when we're footing the bill, right? Oh, order what you like. You want to really make the person feel welcome. Well, when you're stuck with a $120 bill that you didn't necessarily anticipate, that can really take a hit for your monthly finances. So again, making the proper preparations in advance is important, but knowing the types of things to prepare for is even more important. And then the last one I have here is something that we can totally forget about, right? Like, what if you need to hop on an Amtrak, you know, and get to another state really quickly, especially for tri-state area folks? You know, you're in New York, you need to hop to Philly. The Amtrak is what, probably 50 to 70 bucks one way or round trip. I can't remember, but nevertheless, if you're not properly prepared for that, that can become a struggle. So taxis and trains, don't forget, those things matter, especially if you're like running late for a meeting, you got to give a presentation, you know, all those little things that we can tend to forget. But having this professional fund to account for these expenses is going to really, really help position you in a way in which you can start to take advantage of opportunities with ease. Now, of course, there may be other expenses that are unique to your situation, and in that case, you should be sure to include them in your budget. So what I want you to do now is to flip your paper over and list the expenses that are important to your professional development. Only you know what these things are, so I want you to consider them. Now, again, tons of expenses to account for. But you know what's most pressing. You know what you need right now. You know what's going to move the needle. What are those expenses that you're currently planning for, need to plan for, or didn't even think you had to plan for, but now that you've seen them, you know, you find they're important to your professional development. And when you start to list those expenses, just throw out a ballpark figure. How much is that going to cost you on a monthly basis? And if it's something like an educational program or an executive program, you know, how much is it for the life of the course or the life of the program? And then kind of break that up based on what you know about how the classes are offered. You know, if it's half a year or, you know, if it's a few weeks, whatever it is. But break it up so that you can get that monthly figure that you would need to save in order to take advantage of that particular goal or expense. Now, given the amount you want to dedicate towards your professional fund, you can now divide the money between these expenses that you've just listed, or just simply say, hey, whatever I save towards my professional fund is going to be available to any of these particular expenses that I may need, you know? So you've already know how much money you're saving towards the fund itself. And for some of you, you may want to create a mini budget even within that, right? Allocate X amount of dollars for this, X amount of dollars for that, Y amount of dollars for this. Or you can just simply say, look, all of it is there for any professional related expenses that I may need to take on. And how you spend that money is going to obviously be dependent upon what's most important to you, right? So it could be for some of us, you know, it's hiring that coach, right? As I mentioned before, it's hiring someone to work with you on your resume or your presentation skills, or maybe you get nervous, you know, in front of a crowd and presenting. Maybe you need to work with that type of a coach. Whatever it is, you know what's most important to you. So prioritize these expenses based upon your needs. Consider the ones that are time-bound and will help move the needle in the direction you wish to take your career. And what I mean by time-bound is, you know, for example, if you know the National Urban League Conference is coming up and that's a priority for you, well, that's probably one of the first expenses that you should account for, that you should start saving for if you're not already saving for. Whereas, you know, hiring a coach could come later. Maybe that's important, but not as important as the conference. Maybe, you know, getting new clothes for your wardrobe is important, especially given the conference, right? You want to look fly when you go. So maybe, you know, the wardrobe is more important, and then it's the conference. Whatever it is for you, you know your situation best. So now I want to actually end here so that we're able to have enough time for as many questions as possible. I do hope this information has been helpful to you, and I feel like one of the best key learnings from this presentation is that you can simply use this quick and easy budget to do a lot more than just account for your professional related expenses and goals. You can use it to account for any goals that you may have. And I hope that the process was easy for you to follow and just to understand how to do it, again, in a quick and easy way. That's what it's meant to be. So now we will take questions, and I turn it back over to Jody.
No, thank you so much. You know, even I sat here trying to get my 4 quadrants together. I need to actually work on quadrant 1 a little bit more and figure out how much I'm really bringing in monthly to give you a number. But, you know, I don't know how everyone else is doing. But as an entrepreneur, life is not as consistent. Or even if you're, you know, some people complain about, I don't make enough money, but at least if you know you're getting it twice a month, it's better than you're not sure.
Right.
So thank you so much for that. And I do think, I hope everyone on, you know, who's listening today found a few things that they could save on or that we don't really need. I mean, we get used to things, and sometimes we don't even use them, like clothes that you bought that are in your closet, but stuff like, you know, you might be paying for cable TV, but are you really home enough to watch it, and are you just paying for it just to pay for it? Is that something you could get rid of? You know, things like that. So, you know, thank you for jogging all of our minds and, you know, notions, and definitely giving it the career switch and thought process of, like, where can we invest this in ourselves and our career. So one question is, you know, a lot of folks said that they really use their credit cards in emergencies. You know, what's your advice on credit card usage in general, and is that really all they're for? And, you know, what might be a better strategy than credit card use for emergencies?
Absolutely. So I hear this a lot, and it could definitely be valid. But for most of us, it can also be a cop-out. So I want to approach it from both perspectives.
Okay.
If you're using your credit card for emergencies, then great, right? That's a great use. But are you using it responsibly? I think for me, it's always going to come back to that. I don't really care what you use it for, and whatever you want to spend, you know, use your credit card for. It's up to you. But is it responsible in the sense that you're paying it off in full at the end of the month? That's really all that it comes down to. So if you find that, you know, you're overextended this month and you've got a few $100s left in your checking account before you get paid again, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to just use my credit card to buy what I need to buy for this interview I got coming up. Okay, no problem. That's great. But now that the interview's over and your statement is here, are you paying back that amount in full? And if you're already running a balance on your credit card, the least you could do is pay off the amount that you did spend on the clothes that you bought for the interview. Because then you truly would be paying it back in full, and you're not creating more interest on that particular purchase, right? You already have a balance. You're already getting charged interest, so that is what it is. But if you're using your credit card for such purchases to help you get to the next level with expenses that you may not be able to pay for in cash, the idea is to then later pay it off with cash. And if you're unable to do it by the end of the month, I always suggest definitely within 3 months. So within 3 months, if you have not paid that balance from the purchases that you've made, then you're not using your card responsibly. Understand that behavior so that then you don't do it again. Because now you know, okay, the last time I did this and I didn't pay it off in 1 month and I didn't pay it off in 3 months, so I need not use my credit card. When it comes down to it, I need to go back to my quick and easy budget, rearrange some things, see what I can cut out for the next few months, and finance this particular expense with cash. That would be my thoughts.
No, thank you. I mean, I think we've all been there, done that, and we'll still have to at one point or another. And emergencies do come up, and that last minute, oh, you thought you were only going to do 1 day of an interview, and suddenly they're like, well, we want you back tomorrow, and you don't have another suit with you, or it's not local or something, and you find yourself going somewhere. So this is another great question that came from a few folks, so I'm going to kind of morph it into one, but how far in advance, like depending on what the professional expense is, how far should you start saving? Does the amount matter? Does the actual, is it the laptop that you need 12 months in advance? Is it the conference you need, so how do you figure that out?
Right. So again, I have to go back to the first piece that we talked about, which was awareness, right? After you do an exercise like the quick and easy budget, you're now aware of what you can do. So the answer to this question is, now that you've gone through the process of creating a quick and easy budget, you know what you can afford to do. Now, given the expenses that you want to take on, need to take on, you have to bring those two ideas together. If you know you need a new laptop, you start to do the research, you get quotes, and you may figure out that the laptop you want or the tablet or whatever is $800 or $1,200. Now, you know what you're bringing in, you know what your numbers are, right? So break up that amount, divide it by, maybe 3, 4, or even 12 months. So that gives you just how far in advance you're going to allow yourself to save for that expense. Now, if it's something that's a bit more time-bound, so for example, I'll use the upcoming conference. If you know you haven't registered for the conference yet, so you're not going to get any of those, early bird pricing, but looking at what the current pricing is just for the registration, and then think about airfare and lodging. Think about all of the expenses that are going to go into getting you to that conference and then being there for 2 to 3 days and then coming back. Don't forget about taxis and little things like that. So try to figure out the total expense of that time-bound event. And then knowing how much time you have left, right? So today's June 3rd, and I believe the conference starts July 29th. So you literally have about a month and 2 extra weeks. And within that time, what you may get paid 3 or 4 more times, probably comfortably like 3 more times, you'll get a check. Okay, so you've got to divide that big number by 3. How much of your check can you now devote to saving for the conference?
Gotcha.
And using that number, that'll give you more awareness, right? So if that number is larger than what you can afford based on what you've learned from the quick and easy budget, then you know where you need to then, not engage in this or not engage in that or go back to the budget, see if you can find more money. But now you know. So it's always about that awareness piece.
Gotcha. Yeah, those 3 A's are great. So this is, what most people think, and this came in quite a bit. Any suggestions for those of us that believe that there really is nothing left to cut? Like they've cut out the cell phone, they've cut out cable, they don't go out much. It's like, so how, like what do you do until you can raise your income level to where you might have some extra funds for professional development or for anything?
Absolutely. I love this question because, one, as a professional coach, and I've been doing it for over 12 years in financial services now, I totally understand this. I've been there. That's how I know it. But there's three things. One, work with a coach, because a coach can always find money that you don't think you have. And it's because we're not attached to things. We're not seeing it from your perspective. And we do this all day, every day. So we're focused on different sets of considerations than you are as the consumer. You're living in it every day. You feeling the pressure. You know what you can't do without, or you think you know. But at the end of the day, if you bring in a professional, you've got this objectivity to help you analyze your situation, and there may be more money to find. Okay, let's say you have found all the money. The next option is the only other option: increase your income. There are only two things you can do to impact your financial life at any given time: increase your income, decrease your expenses. That's all you can do. That is it. That is all. So we always go the route of decreasing your expenses first. Why? Because it's easier. It's so much easier to knock out things than it is to go and gain an entirely new set of, revenue streams. So if you've done everything you can to knock out expenses, now you really need to start putting your energies into how can I increase my income. And what I don't want you to do is get overwhelmed by that, right? Because we all don't have personalities that are just like, okay, great, I'm going to go and do that. If you're like really stressed about that and that idea overwhelms you, this is where you may be able to reach out to a mentor or a sponsor, or if you can afford a coach, work with someone who can help you start to think about ways to increase your income. If you've got a 9-to-5, then that could be promotion, that could be raise, and that's a discussion that you can have relatively quickly. This doesn't need to happen, only around the mid-year review or anything like that. You've got a situation, so you've got to now put together your best resources and get creative about how you can raise some money. The other thing is, if you've got a talent and a gift that you're sitting on, you need to learn to monetize it. I am always a big proponent of entrepreneurship, and we should really use our jobs as training grounds to help us build skill sets to start a business. Work your 9-to-5, continue to bring in that money, but use that money strategically to start investing in yourself. So that takes me to the second thing, right, which is consider your gifts and talents, and if you're monetizing them. If you're good at cooking, start catering food. If you're good at, tutoring in a particular subject, reach out to kids who may need your services, or parents who may need your services. Think about a need you can supply over the next few weeks or months to make some extra money. And it just comes down to that. It's bottom line. If you really can't get rid of anything else, then you've got to start thinking of ways to increase your income. Now, you could go to route of playing a lotto and all of that, but I don't recommend it. Your odds are not in your favor. But if you do happen to come into a lump sum of money, voila, right? But use it strategically. I would not necessarily say take out a loan or go into debt to get more money. That's where you really need to consult a professional, because you need a strategy to do that. It's always a solution, but it's not a solution for everyone. So don't be so quick to just run to those types of solutions without consulting a professional. And that would be the best way I could answer that one.
Yeah, so we only have a little time left, so I'm going to combine a couple of questions into one. So there's other folks out there like me who, you have some lean months, you have some not so lean months, or some folks that have a temporary job, or, part-time work while they're in school, doing other things. So, how do you kind of balance that? Like, they want to save and they know that they need more income. Some folks are in school, so so these are, some of them have negative numbers when they did the 4 quadrants, and so how do you deal with the negative number to get out of there? And then, what if you can't, like, that you need these things, right? A coach or someone to look at your resume or to attend some of these conferences, what if you can't afford to pay finance coach, or like me, a career coach or a fitness instructor to get healthier or whatever. So if you're in the negative and your money is not steady, what do you do? And then, what do you do if you really just, you know what you need, but you can't afford to pay those folks?
Awesome. Love this question as well, because this is where you feel like, okay, what's left, right? I'm hanging on a thread here and I need hope. But what I want to remind everyone is that this is a quote that recently came to me, and I've been operating in it for the past few weeks now. We have to fire fear as our CEO. We have to fire fear as the thing that is operating how we live our financial lives. So one, understand that negative numbers are temporary. Negative numbers are just a reflection of what's going on right now. You can forego probably more than you actually think when it comes to your lifestyle. Oh, and this is actually the third point that I didn't touch on to answer that last question. But when it comes to living in negative numbers, what we are not prepared to do, which is the third solution, but we're never prepared for it, is to make drastic lifestyle changes. And I'm talking drastic. So if you're living in negative numbers consistently, then you need to start considering things like, how can I not pay rent for the next 6 months? Who can I live with and save on rent so that I can save money and start to position myself for the future I want? How can I decrease my car note? Do I really need this type of car? Maybe I should turn it in and get something a little bit more economical for the next 12 months. So again, everything is short term, but it's with the goal in mind. This is temporary. You're only operating in fear when you start to think, well, what else can I do? There's nothing else that I can cut. I don't know what else. That's fear, because you're not prepared to make the last best effort, which is the thing that will really create a drastic lifestyle change. And I've had clients who have done it and have cried and have gone through, the mental and emotional pieces that are around that, because who wants to move in with a friend? Who wants to admit that they're down on their luck, or they're not where they want to be financially? Who wants to move back home? No one wants to do those things. But at the end of the day, turning in that car and saving $600 or $400 a month, being broke and in the hole $400 a month, and then still trying to put on the front for everybody like you've got it under control, when really the decisions we need to make to change the situation get harder at that point, but there's still that solution. So we have to condition ourselves to be able to be open and, like I said, creative about what's next. And for most of us, that's what's next, that drastic lifestyle change. That, again, it's only temporary. I implore you to believe it's only temporary. It may not feel good in the beginning, but I've done it. I've done it, and I'm still doing it to an extent. I don't necessarily have to, but I want to position myself. I'm trying to save as much money as I possibly can to buy a house cash, because I don't want a mortgage. And I want to be able to do certain things by not having that mortgage. So I'm living with my aunt right now. And for me, that's not ideal. I feel like maybe I should be, having my own home, and I've got other friends who got this and that going on, or I don't want other people to necessarily feel a certain way about me. I'm over it. This is personal. Money's personal. It's behavioral. Do what's best for you and consider those drastic lifestyle changes. And I promise you, when you start to see those zeros add up in your account, when you start to see yourself saving more, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better, and you're going to be encouraged to keep going.
Well, Dominique, I just want to say thank you, and also I, asked you to come today and join us because you are keeping it as real as possible, sharing of yourself and what you've been through. And so, it's all about massive change. And as you said, broke is a temporary situation and condition, which we can all say we've been there at one point or another. And poor is a state of mind, and no one on this call and in our audience is poor. That is a whole nother issue. You might not have all the money you need, you might not have all the help you need, but you will get it by coming back to these series as well as listening to folks. The other answer I have for some of the other people on the line who have asked about, what if you can't afford these things? There's always folks that will barter for you. It might not have to be money. Maybe there's something that you do that they need done. Maybe they need a website, but you need some coaching or your, other stuff done for you. So be willing to barter. For conferences, pay attention early. Maybe a lot of times they do want volunteers. For a lot of the hot conferences like Black Enterprise and even the Urban League, they usually have to apply ahead of time. Sometimes they even have you write an essay why. But you can get there sometimes without paying and sometimes by having to do a little work. But being in the mix, if that's where the conference that you feel you need to be at, being there is worth doing a little work even if you don't have to fully pay for it. But nothing is free.
Exactly.
So,
Jody, may I just say one more thing?
Sure.
One more thing really quickly. For those people who feel like they do need professional assistance in one shape, form, or fashion, get together with some girlfriends or your guy friends, your boys, and pool your money together and reach out to the coach that you may want to work with and make them an offer. Hey, a group of us want you to come in, talk about X, Y, and Z. Here are our needs, and we're willing to pay you X, Y, and Z. I'm sure you will get the attention of someone that you want to work with.
Exactly. I do that with my fitness stuff too. People can't afford my rates by themselves, but if they put a small group together and I still make the same money in an hour, I'm okay. So for the last little pitch for today, one, definitely know your money, be aware of it, your 3 A's, action and achieve what you want out of it. And we would love for you to come back in the next week as we kick off the summer part of our series with Control-Alt-Delete, how to reboot your stalled job search. And some of you might not be so stalled, or some of you might not even be searching now, but it's never too late to start and never too late to get some extra tips. So join us for the next part of our series. We have June 10th. We have June 24th, which is maximizing LinkedIn. We have great experts for all of these to show you really how to leverage and use LinkedIn to your advantage. And then the do's and don'ts straight from a recruiter. And he has been really doing great things and as actually our moderator for our executive panel that we're having in Fort Lauderdale. And if you have not started saving, as Dominique said, for the National Urban League Conference, the time is still now. You can get down to Florida. The career fair part is free to the public, so if you can, drive or get in a car with a bunch of your girls and friends and come down to Florida this July 29th, 30th, 31st, and then August 1st. We'd love to see you there, and we want you to join us. So the summer series kicks off next week. We hope you come back. Please sign up and register today and tell your friends. Dominique, thanks once again for joining us. Your information is priceless, no pun intended, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.